But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
I'm James.
We are in Rochester, New York. It is after midnight now, and Barbora Krejcikova and Carlos Alcaraz are the Wimbledon champions.
I love good news. To paraphrase our future president, I love good news.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I know it's been a very eventful weekend on that front.
This Wimbledon, it kind of went wild. So earlier in the week, you tweeted something about how I can barely remember a tournament where the women outsold the men so much. And I was like, okay, like not too much on that. I felt like you were overselling it a bit. And then the women's semifinals were very exciting. And then everybody's faves, Babs K, won the singles title.
She's a plural. Everybody's faves.
And I realized that she is a slam winner, but it was a true shocker.
I mean, yes and no, but also when I tweeted that, the tenor of it was, for me at least, that the men were giving next to nothing. And then I got a couple responses saying, well, US Open 2020, Australian Open 2023, like 3 or 4 events in the last 10 years to refute what I said. And listen.
It was more of a rhetorical question.
Listen, US Open 2020 gave us that guy losing from 2 sets up in a final. We got that in this tournament before championship weekend even happened.
Right.
Okay.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
For me, even, I'm not saying that the women were playing out of their minds, that it was the greatest women's tennis I've ever seen. I'm just saying that this tournament, in particular on the men's side, gave next to nothing for me personally.
Yeah, there weren't really a lot of classics. Djokovic had part of his draw collapse. De Minaur had to withdraw. We kind of expected Fritz to get to the semis. That didn't happen.
Well, you did.
The Musetti match wasn't that exciting.
That's how you're just going to gloss over that prediction that you made that didn't come true?
I guess it was unfair to expect that. And what would have happened had he met Djokovic for the 10th time, winless?
The men's final gave something.
It gave something. I don't know what it gave. We'll get there.
Let's start with the women.
I kind of liked that during this tournament, it felt like the players who had the tougher roads were the ones who ended up winning the final on both the men's and the women's side. On Babs' side, she had to deal with Collins. She knocked out Ostapenko. She beat the 2022 Wimbledon champ Rybakina, and that was just to reach the final.
She played Jasmine Paolini in the final. At this tournament, we had Carlos completing the Channel Slam, winning both Roland Garros and Wimbledon. And we had Jasmine Paolini making the final at both the French Open and Wimbledon.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people were like, well, what is she doing here? How did she do this 2 slams in a row? But she did it.
She did it. She was lucky, though.
Yes.
That match against Madison Keys, that was luck. And you need luck to have these kinds of results in slams.
Right. Against Navarro, she did the thing. That was a superb match from Paolini against Navarro. But against Madison, she did get a little lucky at the end because Madison hurt her knee and could no longer compete.
Sure, she had some luck against Keys, but she also took out Donna Vekic in one of the matches of the tournament. 3rd set, super tiebreak. And she just seemed unflappable the entirety of this tournament. Mm-hmm. And what she did against Emma Navarro, wild.
Oh.
What she did in that match. Carved that lady up and sent her back home. Told her to have a good flight. Mind you, Emma Navarro is the one who beat both Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff.
And who some people were afraid was about to win the tournament because she looked so great.
And she also had a 3-0 head-to-head against Jasmine, wasn't that the case? And instead, she completely flipped the script. So if you're thinking, okay, she beat Naomi and she beat Coco, tennis is a game of matchups. the reason why Jasmine beat her was because this is a different type of player. But no, she had beaten and handled Jasmine quite easily before.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Jasmine she moved around that tennis court with such ease and handled everything Navarro threw at her. It was as complete a performance as you'll see on a tennis court.
During the Vekic match, as the match went on, Donna was clearly exhausted. You know, in between points and in between games, she just looked worn out. And she was also dealing with some pain in her forearm, but she really managed to fight through that. And it wasn't a beautiful match by either player, but it was certainly a hard-fought match. It was tense, and it was very even going into that final match tiebreak. I was impressed by Donna's resolve because, I mean, she looked terrible. Like, she looked as she felt awful. And she was crying in between changeovers, and I really just felt for her. But Jasmine, you know, almost 3 hours in, looked fresh as a daisy. Looked like she was bouncing around the place.
I saw some people say that Donna let that match slip. And I don't think that that's fair to her. I think why people think that is because the match looked like it was being determined on her racket. And so when she's in a position to maybe get ahead in the scoreline and she's unable to do it, it looks like she's letting something slip away. But you also had Donna, with her back against the wall, playing some of the best breakpoint faced tennis that you'll ever see. Some of these rallies where she is inches away from losing a match, she is fearless.
Yeah.
You're sitting there watching, and you're holding your breath because this is such low margin tennis that is being played.
Jasmine is gaining this reputation for being able to lose the first set and then cause a lot of problems, right? And in the final against Babs, she lost the first set pretty routinely, wins the second, and it's like, oh, here we go. We got a real match going.
What was the premise of this whole section here?
Oh, just to kind of set up the...
You were saying that you like that the players who got to the back end and who won the tournament had the toughest routes.
Right. And I felt the same way on the men's side. And so I was just commenting that often the players with the toughest route to the finals are just too tired and too overmatched once they finally get to the final. This tournament, I felt like the players who made it through tough draws actually won the titles.
Okay.
That was it. Let's talk about Babs.
We almost didn't talk about Babs on the preview episode. If you recall, you were yapping about the women's draw and talking all manner of things about all manner of people. And I said to you, well, I know you want to talk about this little bit, because we could have easily just skipped it. It felt like the type of thing where I know you want to talk about Babs, so I'm going to give you your little 30 seconds here. And you were not bullish about her chances. You just wanted to say her name on this podcast.
Right. And what did I say? I said, Babs, what are you doing here? At the time it was, okay, now she's in the fourth round. She scrapped through this opening round match against Kudermetova.
That was on the mid-episode you said that.
Yeah. And what are you doing here? She makes the final and then wins it. And the conclusion is that she is a big match player. Period. Like, she is a big stage player. She brings it.
I loved everything about that match against Rybakina because the match, again, just like with Vekic and Paolini, the match felt like it was on Rybakina's racket.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with Rybakina serving ahead in that third set, Barbara came back to win the second set after being blitzed pretty much in the first set. You thought that maybe, okay, Yelena has figured this out. And with such a big, strong, accurate server serving first in the third set and not seeming too bothered, it felt like maybe Barbara was up against it.
Right.
But throughout the entirety of that third set, she held her own. She fell behind on serve, love 30 a couple times. She'd be pushed, bullied in some rallies, but still managed to just whip that forehand cross court and wrest advantage in a rally. And she never gave Rybakina an inch.
She's not somebody to, like, be blown out in the first set and then resign herself, right? She always thinks she has a chance. I like this unassuming confidence that Barbara has, that she insisted she was part of the top echelon of the WTA. She insisted that her Roland Garros title be more recognized than it was. She doesn't seem like that type of person, right? But she has this confidence about her. And in the match against Rybakina, she was smart enough to bring this woman to net and just make her miss over and over. I mean, Rybakina probably should have won that match. She should have made a lot more overheads and volleys, and she just didn't.
She went 4 months without winning a match this year.
See, this is why I wasn't. She's a past major winner. She won Roland Garros in 2021, but I think anyone could be forgiven for saying that this would be a shocker. Nobody was predicting Krejcikova.
I'm sure some people felt that she would have been a one-slam wonder in her career as a singles player, but that didn't really track with what she's done on the regular WTA tour subsequent to winning that Roland Garros. She's beaten Iga twice in finals on hard courts. Like, that's not an easy thing to do.
But as you said, she went 4 months this season without winning a match. She was dealing with injuries. She had a few wins on grass courts, but the clay season was a total wash. And so coming in here, who really expected this from her?
You say nobody really expected this of her, and while that may be true in her form leading up to this tournament, once she's in the throes of the tournament and you see that she's winning matches and playing better and better as the tournament progresses, then it becomes less of a surprise. I feel like by the time Barbora got to the quarterfinals, I don't think there was anybody who didn't think she could win this tournament if you were watching how she was playing. People just don't want to give her the requisite credit, which is what she's fought against, I feel. And so winning this tournament, hopefully, will go a long way to just put all that stuff to rest. And those who continue down that road, we just know that they are haters. And that's fine. You're allowed to be a hater. But the prowess and the pedigree of this woman at this point is undeniable.
I was going to say, watching the semis, that if you see Krejcikova in a semifinal, just run the other way. Honestly, just give up. Because her record is peerless. And then if you see her in a final, I guess it's the same thing. She's been in 13 Grand Slam finals and won 12 of them.
It's a little bit different.
Mostly in doubles, of course.
Because 11 of those is doubles.
But now she can say, I'm 2-0 in singles major finals. After she won Roland Garros in 2021, she felt that she didn't get the credit that was due to her. You know, that it wasn't a big deal, that people assumed it was a one-off, it was a fluke. And it's a weird tournament, right? It was still during the pandemic. Crowds were smaller. It just felt like the attention was less. And I think afterward, people still saw her as a great doubles player and just a singles player who lucked her way into a major. This tournament is clearly going to dispel that. Those two finals wins against Iga went a long way to, support her case.
She didn't get a lucky draw in this tournament. She didn't get to the final without having to play top players. She beat big names at this tournament. Once it got to the quarterfinal round, Jelena Rybakina was by far the favorite to win this tournament, and she handled her.
Right. I mean, Rybakina's match against Wozniacki, we said on the last episode, in the first set, she was unplayable.
You said that.
Sure. She was far and away the favorite to win this tournament, once all the biggest names were gone. And she didn't really measure up to the moment, and Barbara did. And in the final, Babs wins the first set 6-2. It seems pretty routine. Jasmine has a way of punching above her weight. I mean, she's incredibly fast, and she's just able to roll with the punches in these matches. She always seems like she's having a good time. It's such a good trait in a competitor that you never really seem that bothered. And her mom is in the stands, always smiling, seems to just be having a ball, even in that tense semifinal against Vekic. But ultimately, Krejcikova was dictating more after she lost that second set, where really everything went off the rails for her. Her rhythm was totally gone. She went to the bathroom, came back, and it was kind of back to first set routine. I was really glad that Jasmine was able to establish herself in that match, that it wasn't another blowout, that she was able to show what she can do as a competitor. But in the long run, Krejcikova was the one who dictated through that match.
I saw a lot of people saying ahead of that match that Paolini is the favorite. I don't know if that was based solely on her seed or the fact that she was the French Open finalist and now making the Wimbledon final. That gives her a certain amount of clout that she didn't have going into the French Open final. But for me, knowing what I know about Babs and what she can do, it felt to me that Babs was the big favorite going into this final.
Yeah, I guess it's easy to say now in hindsight, but despite the difference in ranking, Jasmine being number 7 and Babs number 31, I felt like Jasmine was a pretty big underdog in this match, just given the experience factor.
The 4 months without winning a match didn't matter at this point.
No.
Did not.
Nope.
Babs has played slam finals, beat in singles once or doubles 11 times prior. She's been on this stage so many times. And we know that she can beat anybody in the world. We don't know that about Jasmine Paolini.
Right. Babs said a few times that she's at the biggest stage of her career. She said that after the semifinals. And it was interesting to me because she has already won a single slam, right? She has been on Philippe Chatrier and gotten the trophy. And she kept saying Wimbledon is the real thing. Right? And it made me understand that a lot of players view Wimbledon at a different elevation than some of the other majors. Like, this is a different thing. Being able to compete on center court for the Wimbledon title, that's a whole other ball game.
A lot of people view the French Open as the 4th.
Right.
And a clear 4th of the 4 slam.
When she won, she told the crowd that this is the greatest day of her tennis career and, in fact, the greatest day of her life. And when she was given the Venus Rosewater dish, she sort of just gazed upon it for a while in awe, I think trying to convince herself that this was real.
One of the heartwarming parts of this run to the title was the connection to Yana Novotná. If you don't know, please look her up. The late Yana Novotná died at age 49. She was one of my favorite players of all time. I lived through her winning or trying to win Wimbledon in the mid-90s, eventually doing it in 1998. She would later become Krejcikova's coach. And after the semi-final, I believe it was Annabelle Croft asked Barbora what it was like, what it meant to her, having had that relationship with Yana and feeling like she's looking down on her, that type of questioning. And Barbora answered the question, and then afterward it kind of seemed to hit her, really, what was going on. And the emotion of missing Yana. She even said so. She said, I'm so sorry. I just really miss her a lot. And was crying on court. And then after she wins, she goes into the clubhouse and she sees her name on the wall of champions and she starts crying again. And so this Yana connection, it was an added layer of emotion for pretty much everybody involved. How could it not be?
Yana is someone that it seems all people in the tennis community can agree on. One of the rare things that people just love her, right? Just the experience of seeing her lose these close finals in Wimbledon and finally winning it in 98. She's an icon. Having passed away a few years ago, she's become a really important figure and a sentimental figure. She and Barbara were apparently very close, personally, in addition to having the coaching relationship. And Yana said, go out there and win a slam in singles. And she did in 2021. And now she's got the Wimbledon title.
And why that carried extra heft was Barbara didn't really feel like that was in the cards for her at that point.
Right.
And years later, she made it happen, not once, but now twice.
She was a very successful doubles player, made kind of her name and her money in doubles. And when she started to get some promising results in singles, she was like, I think I could really make a go of this. And she said that her partner, Katerina Siniakova, was always more active in singles and more successful than her from when they were young. But she really turned it around when she started to get some promising wins.
The other thing about this final that was heartwarming for me, I keep using that word, because it was just a feel-good weekend all around with the results. Mm-hmm. From the women's winner to Carlos winning to the men's doubles, the women's doubles, the mixed doubles. This was a weekend of good news. Mm-hmm. In this women's final, you had two women who are 28, right? They're both the same age.
Yep.
Both maturing later in life as singles players. Jasmine has only become a top flight singles player from the end of last year into this year. Really, it's been a very quick rise for her. And now she's a 2-time slam finalist. You have Barbora, who is as veteran a presence on tour as you can find, really, in both disciplines. She's like a mother on tour.
Right, but actually not even that old.
She's not.
And her singles career hasn't really been that long.
I mean, excluding the mothers on tour.
The literal mothers.
And the women who have retired and come back, or took maternity leave and come back. I feel like she occupies a very specific place on tour. Nobody's out here sitting at tennis matches for fun because they're a tennis nerd, like Barbora Krejcikova.
She's such a jock, right? Like, she's so into the sport. Jasmine, let's just take a moment. The rise for Jasmine, I think, needs a little bit more appreciation. She had never reached the third round of a slam until this year. She did it at the Australian Open, then makes 2 consecutive finals at the French and Wimbledon. It's not a fluke, and it's unusual, very unusual, to sort of blossom at 28.
She's up to number 5 in the rankings.
Wow. And I think number 3 in the live race.
Number 10 is now Barbora Krejcikova. Back in the top 10. Back where she belongs, frankly.
Babs was asked in the presentation about, Martina Navratilova's here, a great Czech champion. How do you think they will feel about your win back home in Czechia? And Barbara completely ignored the Martina part of the question and said, I think they'll be surprised. I'm surprised. But my reaction was, it's probably not a big deal for them because Czech women win literally all the time.
Didn't Marketa win last year?
Right. Didn't Petra win 2 Wimbledons in the 2010s? Martina won 9. It's just the Czech women, it's actually not a big deal. It's not like a small tennis country.
Not to say that's not a big deal, but that it's unprecedented.
But don't treat it like, oh, this little country, they must have parades in the street. This happens a lot, actually.
What do you think about Miss Rybakina after this tournament?
I think she has a big match problem, if I'm being totally honest. I know that she has been dealing with a lot of health issues, and she's had to pull out of a lot of tournaments this year, but the semifinal was perplexing to me. I felt like there was a huge mental block, and she missed a lot that she shouldn't have missed.
I think she came up against a very game opponent who she could not blow off the court. What do you do about that?
Well,
that's
also the thing.
People just took it for granted that she'd be able to do this with no problem. But they're still your opponent across the net. She is not Iga Swiatek on clay. That she is not.
No, and even, a big babe tennis player like Aryna Sabalenka has a lot more variety and a lot more options than Rybakina does.
Okay, Sabalenka may have more options, but does she use them?
I'm just saying, Rybakina is going to be limited by her really mediocre net game.
Okay.
If people are going to draw her into the net and she continues to miss volleys and overheads, then people are going to know that's something that might fall apart if she's in a tough match.
Is it time to revisit this big 3, big 4 thing on the women's side?
No, I think we need to deconstruct it completely. I feel like you've been waiting for that.
On the men's side.
Oh, that's all?
That's...
On the men's side, what a weird tournament. On the bottom half, Djokovic's half, he gets a walkover in the quarterfinals. He gets a surprise semifinalist. The match against Holger Rune was no biggie, but spurred a lot of needless drama. He came into the final without really being tested. And I think it was still questionable what state his knee was in. I think it was still unclear. Because he's still, at his age, so good that he could beat most of these guys without truly being tested.
Even with being a step slower, he was still able to get to the final without any real problem. I think it really shows just how much of a regression Holger has taken
Yes.
in the last little bit. And maybe it's not a regression so much as it is people having kind of figured him out a little bit. But he is not the threat for slams that, I don't want to say folks, but just going to lay it at my own feet, that I even thought he was going to be at this point.
Right.
Not to say that he can't be, but this was not it. It continues to not be it. Doesn't even look to being close. Because that performance against Djokovic in the quarterfinals, to then see what we saw in the final and what somebody like Carlos was able to do against him, and then also to see what Sinner did against him in Australia, it begs a lot of questions for me personally. It also tells me that the rest of the field on the men's side is just so far behind these top guys. And who are
I
even
agree.
the top guys right now? It's Carlos and it's Yannick as the 1 and 2. Maybe you want to interchange them. I'm not going to make that call. You still have Daniil showing up here and there in big matches, going deep in tournaments, is able to cause some trouble.
Making a second straight semifinal at Wimbledon.
Right. He's maybe a 1B at this point. And you have Djokovic there as well. Still just a rung below Carlos and Yannick. I'm not ready to put the nail in his coffin to say that he's done and what have you. But those are the 4 best men's tennis players in the world. For me.
Right. I actually would have picked the triumvirate of Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. Even though Novak hasn't beaten a top 10 player, that stat shook me. I had not realized that.
In 2024.
This year. I had put him as the favorite for Wimbledon, first of all, just because of his record here. But everybody to me is quite a ways away from that level of competition.
Alcaraz wins this tournament, going from a disappointing run post-Cincinnati last year to beating Sinner both times he's played him this year, winning Roland Garros, and then completely pulverizing Djokovic in this final to defend his Wimbledon title.
I'm very superstitious as a sports fan, so it's 6-2, 6-2, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? I'm waiting for this 5-set battle. Things are going to plan. Djokovic is making a bit of a fight, and there's not quite a momentum shift, but the tenor of the match changes in the third set. He's fighting back a little harder.
Alcaraz has the opportunity to break early in that third set to really throttle Djokovic, put him under serious pressure. Djokovic holds the line. He holds serve, is able to stay his nose in front, serving first in that third set. And so you feel that pressure start to build. You even see Carlos starting to be a little bit frustrated on court, going from smiley, happy jokey, rifling 100-mile-an-hour winners all over the court to talking to the box. Say, look at me. Why are you looking up there? Look at me. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, you can't have this be derailed by derailing yourself.
Right.
That would be abhorrent for you to do that in this moment.
But it was the first time that he had gotten some true resistance from Djokovic. He had fought pretty hard to just hold serve midway through that third set, and Carlos did hold serve. Had he not, it could have gone totally differently in the third set. The game at 4-all, Alcaraz played with such chutzpah. I remember last year we called it audacity. But the way in which he broke Djokovic at that game to go up 5-4, it was like, well, this is over. I mean, just the boldness with which he attacked Novak's serve. He seemed like he just wanted to shut it down.
It was absurd. And so he goes up 5-4, about to serve for the match on the changeover. Djokovic barely sits down, gets up after like 15 seconds and walks to the other side of the court to receive. He's smiling because he understands the absurdity of what's going on, just how ridiculous this man is playing. How many times in Djokovic's career has he been in the position where he may be a little bit down, somebody's feeling themselves, and he wrestles the momentum away? And he often doesn't relinquish it. Like once he has it, he has it. And so at some point in that third set, he felt like he was getting it. And then Carlos comes and plays this outrageous blinder of a return game to break him at love.
And so then it's time for Carlos to try to serve out the match. And this game is a disaster.
He gets up 40 love. He has triple match point, triple championship point, and then he starts missing first serves. Then he starts hitting let upon let upon let on the serves and getting a little bit careless, to be frank. This is the thing with Carlos. The genius that people often describe his game
can sometimes be a fatal flaw. You know, sometimes you can watch him and say, why is he being so careless, or why is he making these silly decisions? And that is actually kind of two sides of the same coin. It's part of the Alcaraz experience. But this was unwelcome. And
then on the third championship point, he serves on volleys, gets to mid-court, and he's about to wind up to take a big swing on the forehand to hit a swinging volley, and Paviji screams out from the audience. And he misses it. We're back to deuce. He ends up losing a stretch of 9 of 10 service points. 9 of 10 points. Djokovic has the momentum again. He's been gifted the momentum again. Carlos eventually winning the tiebreak easily to win the title.
Yeah, things could have gone sideways really badly. After he failed to serve out the match, he was able to steady things, played a smart, a little more conservative tiebreak.
Did he? Did he though? He really didn't.
I mean, maybe for his standards.
The penultimate point of that tiebreak was an audacious drop shot. Mm-hmm. A ridiculous drop shot. He missed 2 balls that he shouldn't have missed, that would have probably had him winning this tiebreak 7-1 instead of 7-4. He challenged balls he had no business challenging.
Yes, that's how you could tell he was getting a bit nervous, because he was making very, very wrong challenges.
I saw a stat that he was correct 2 of 27 times in this tournament with challenges. He's just terrible at it.
But the story of this match is that Carlos's level, for the most part, was just incredibly high. He came into the final just hitting lights out. And Novak didn't.
Fred, I don't think it was as bad a performance as people make it out to be from Djokovic. That this was completely listless, that it's indicative of stark decline. I think, sure, he was a little bit slower. The knee is probably still a problem. But his opponent was that much better than him in this match.
Right.
Literally that much better than him.
So at age 21, Carlos Alcaraz has won the Channel Slam. For many years, between 1981 and 2007, nobody won the Channel Slam. Bjorn Borg was the last one to do it in 1980, and it was considered one of the most difficult feats in tennis, at least on the men's side. Tons of women have done it. But on the men's side, it was one of those things that happens pretty rarely. And since then, Rafa's won it, Djokovic has won it, Federer has won the Channel Slam, and now Carlos. He's the youngest one to have done it. Rafa was 22 at the time. And again, we are talking about male players. People who have done it on the women's side are many. Steffi, Martina, Serena, etc. But in a year that so many pundits said is Sinner's, like Jannik Sinner will own this year. And in many ways, he did. He's still number one by quite a margin. Carlos now has 2 of the 3 slams that have been played, and he's beaten Jannik the only 2 times they've played this year.
And so this is why folks are excited about this rivalry, this would-be rivalry. But it's also yet another indication as to how quickly these things can change, how quickly these narratives can be upended. Sinner no longer has as much shine as he did a couple months ago. He picked up that injury heading into Roland Garros, and that kind of shifted the balance a little bit. Little things like that can shift the balance.
Right. You know, you have a dominant season, and then you have preparation for Roland Garros that's not ideal, and that changes the way that you come into the tournament. Then you run into Berrettini early, handle him pretty easily, actually, but lose to Medvedev, and now your season feels different. It's just between the French and Wimbledon, there's so little time to regroup, which is why historically the Channel Slam was so difficult. And there for many years was 1 less week to deal with the surface change. The feat has gotten, I think, slightly easier. Wimbledon will argue about this, but the grass is most likely different than it was in, say, 1995. But also there's a real lack of these big, booming grass court ace machines, right? We don't really see much of them anymore. And so the all-court players have been able to prosper at Wimbledon.
Okay. I mean, we also have more generational talents than we've ever had.
Okay.
I think. The people who are doing it, it's not like you have Sergei Bruguera doing it.
Oh, wow.
You have... you have...
No, but you have less of the Richard Krejciks, just random people who would blow you off the court to mess up your Wimbledon.
I understand the premise of what you're saying. I just don't know if I agree that it's less impressive, is all. It's still
certainly more common.
It's still a completely different surface, no matter if the grass is playing a little bit slower or what have you. At this point now, Carlos has 4 slam titles. He's 21 years old. He has a Channel Slam. We keep seeing flashes of what people call generational talent. And we also see moments of inconsistency. If that will develop into what we saw in this Wimbledon final on a more consistent basis, who knows? Maybe this is who he's going to be his entire career. Or maybe he will become even better. It's just exciting at this point. It's not that long ago that people were talking about, well, is this a flash in the pan? Like, what? Where are the results? Where are the results? They're back. He's back.
And he's a good example of a prodigy who has been able to evolve because, as you said, Ukuna, it seems like people have maybe figured him out. And that doesn't mean that he won't become a great player, but he broke into tennis as this kind of teen prodigy, and then everybody caught up. With Carlos, they have not. They have not caught up. He has continued to mature.
Was the rivalry going to be Carlos and Holger? People weren't really talking about Yannick that much at that point. Then he rose to the fore. Carlos took a little bit of a backseat. Now Carlos is back. We have this two-headed monster at the top of men's tennis right now. Currently, how long will that last? Will Holger rise again? Will Daniil continue to be there? Will he find another level? Those narratives and those rivalries, while exciting, they're very concentrated at the top of men's tennis.
Yeah. Let's get into some of the bullshit. How about that?
That guy, Djokovic, and Medvedev.
Okay. That guy, Taylor Fritz, play a 5-setter. This is what, in the quarterfinals? No, round of 16. For Taylor to get to the quarters to play Musetti. After Taylor wins the match, that guy waylays him at the net. And for those of us who pay attention, this was clearly not a collegial chat.
No.
They asked him about it after the match, and Taylor, he handled the question very well, but did not get into the content of what was talked about. It was clear that that guy was doing something he's done before and engaging in a bit of a lecture.
Trying to position himself as the arbiter of good manners and morals in tennis.
Imagine. I mean, forget about anything that happens outside of tennis, but for him to see himself as kind of the example of good behavior on the tennis court even, it's a level of delusion that I don't think any of us could really aspire to.
Context here being, he's never made the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. He's in this 4th round match, looking like he could do it, having people in our Twitter mentions tagging you specifically to say, hey, didn't you say that Fritz was going to win this match? Why is he down 2-0? That guy's 1 set away from making the quarterfinals. And as he has done in Australia this year, as he has done in the 2020 US Open final, and similar but not as calamitously, he did it at Roland Garros, leading 2-1 in that final against Alcaraz. He showed himself to be a generational choker. I saw him referred to as much on the internet after this match, and it tickled me endlessly because this guy has severe limits to his ability on a tennis court that he doesn't see for himself.
So after the match, he is apparently annoyed about some of the people in Fritz's box who are not part of the tennis world. That's what both Zverev and Fritz said after the match. They were both asked about it. Who do you think in Fritz's box is not part of the tennis world? Any guesses?
He's talking about his girlfriend, Morgan Riddle.
Exactly. Apparently, I don't know what he was talking about. Having watched the match, I really do not know what behavior he was referring to.
I didn't notice anything crazy going on. You have loud fans. You have your own box to pay attention to. But somehow he is focusing on Morgan Riddle. Mm-hmm. It's giving Nene Leakes and Peter Thomas.
Oh.
From Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's what it gave to me.
Now, why are you in women's business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, how about you mind your own business? And the gall and the audacity to stand there after you've had every opportunity to win this match and to lose in such a shambolic way. To then stop Fritz from leaving the court, to berate him about his girlfriend on court. Have you no shame? Like, this is such loser behavior.
Basically to say, get your woman under control. That was the message. And I'm not a body language expert, but it looked like a very uncomfortable exchange. Zverev literally put his arm in front of Fritz to prevent him from advancing toward the umpire. It was like, no, stay here. I'm actually not done.
Because Fritz was done. He was like, oh, okay.
He's not interested.
Yes. And you said that shit with your chest. And I don't care. I don't care. But it is a window to me into how he views women.
Oh, yeah. After the match, Fritz was asked on court, oh, can you give us a little insight into what you all talked about? Because for some reason, the commentators seemed to think they were having a friendly exchange. It didn't look like that to me. And Fritz started his answer with, oh, it's all good. I'm like, oh, that means it's not good. That is not good.
After this match, Morgan did these Instagram stories, and part of it she said, when your man wins for the girls. And those of us who have followed and abhorred that guy for so long, were like, are we the girlies? Are we the girlies? Are we the girls?
A lot of people read into this post, right? Saying that she was making a direct reference to the allegations against him of intimate partner violence against two different women. Tennis Twitter and then media outlets ran with this interpretation, right? There's also another interpretation where that's just kind of an online phrase, like win for the girlies or win for the girls, right? It doesn't necessarily mean anything more than that. What Morgan meant by that, I'm not sure. I don't think she likes the guy. I have no idea if she was referencing what people thought she was referencing. But I couldn't help but look at the whole episode with a lot of skepticism. Because, first of all, Taylor did not win for the girls, right? Taylor won a tennis match. He didn't engage in any restorative justice. He wasn't doing it for anyone but Taylor Fritz. And I haven't seen Taylor out here being vocal or criticizing the way the ATP has handled the Zverev case or any of that. So I didn't really feel like that was very liberatory. You just beat somebody people don't like.
At any rate, Morgan deletes the posts and backtracks on it the next day. And that's that.
And says it had nothing to do with anything in Zverev's personal life or anything off court. I didn't mean that. Yada, 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 whatever. I understand why a lot of people were very disappointed by that post. I get it. But I think I'm just really way too cynical at this point to even assume that the original post meant anything. You know, I don't know. Like, at this point, what do we expect from these people? When she issued the retraction, a lot of people said, well, oh, the lawyers got to her because Zverev's lawyers are famously litigious, or the ATP asked her to take it down. And I think a third option is actually probably the most likely, is that Taylor did not want that distraction while he was still in the tournament. Maybe Taylor agrees with her, but I don't think he anticipated like the attention and the drama that would come from that.
Mm-hmm. For me, the whole thing just had way too much speculation from all sides, from people interpreting it like it was some indictment from her of that guy, and then now to be speculating why it was taken down, what his views are on it. It's all just conjecture, and I'm not into it at all.
Yeah. Djokovic and Gruna. Okay. This was not a hard match, right? Djokovic won this match rather easily, but he was deeply bothered by the crowd yelling Rune, not how you pronounce his name. And I understand it was annoying, and I even said, why don't they just chant Holger instead of Rune? Because it sounds like a boo. The ooh sound sounds like a boo. Djokovic was annoyed about it, but I did not anticipate the way that he was going to react after the match. He said in the on-court interview, I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's also an excuse to boo. Trust me, I know all the tricks. I've played in much more hostile environments, trust me. You guys can't touch me. I've condensed that. It went on for quite a while, actually. And
he also said to have a good night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was such infantile behavior.
Such insecure behavior.
You are blowing this kid off the court, just destroying him, and you've managed to make this into something that it needn't be. You're here saying that these people are intentionally pronouncing his name wrong so that it sounds like boo, just to get into your head.
Meanwhile, you've won in straight sets, and you still feel the need to stay here and lecture and scold the crowd for what they did. And the thing is, like, we can talk about this till the cows come home, but we know for a fact that Novak often has to fabricate little dramas to get himself invested in matches. He's often much better when the crowd is against him. In the final today, when the crowd was behind him, it's like, uh-oh, this can't be good if they're supporting him. He very frequently sort of invents these things to become upset about, and it motivates him, and that makes him successful. But what was this?
Right, but you just said that, the crowd was behind him today, but that's only because he was so far down in the match.
Yes.
That's what happens in every single tennis match. Fans want more tennis when they're there. Not me, but a lot of fans want more tennis, and so they root for the person who is losing. If somebody's down 2-0, they root for the other person.
Yes.
It's not personal. It's almost never personal. I guarantee you 90% of the people who are following tennis or at a tennis match think he is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Think he's the GOAT.
Sure, but I'm saying him having the crowd behind him, I don't think is going to help him. In the final today, I think he would probably find it almost patronizing.
Okay, that may be so. I'm just pointing out that he should be aware of how these things work. Just because you are a GOAT doesn't mean that people aren't going to root for the person who is down 2-0.
Right.
It happened against Federer. It happens against Nadal. It happens against everybody. Mm-hmm. So this was just so not it. It was so beyond the pale. It made him look so small.
Holger was asked about it and was just kind of like, it's whatever. I don't buy it. He has experienced same thing before with the Runa thing, and it didn't seem to bother him the first time, and he was like, I don't get it. But at the same time, we are supposed to believe Novak when he says the little violin celebration is totally innocent and wholesome, right? And that may be so, but why should we believe you? When you've said the Rune thing is just an excuse to boo, but now you're doing a violin gesture supposedly for your daughter, but you've also done it in the past to taunt the crowd. So why should we believe you? Personally, I don't really care. I'm not really invested in you, but you are somebody who purposely has stoked the crowd because you already feel like they're against you.
Somebody like Medvedev,
oh dear God,
says that he stokes the crowd because it helps him. Like, that is an actual authentic reflection on your relationship with the crowd. Mm-hmm. It's not like willy-nilly doing whatever you want and then it always being, well, this was authentic. Like there's no there's no through thread with what Djokovic is doing in these situations, for me at least. Anyway.
No, I did want to talk about the authenticity
That's
thing.
what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
We have people now saying that, this is the authentic Djokovic that we can actually get behind. When they saw him perform like this in this post-match interview, it's like, oh, yeah, I can get behind this guy. This is authentic. He's finally being his true self. Ben Rothenberg talked about that. I've seen so many people in tennis say the same thing. And your question is that what makes this more authentic than anything else he's already done?
Yeah, I guess I want to know, how do you know that this is authentic? Or like, how do you know who is the real him? And comparing it to the heart throwing gesture, which we found cringe, but I'm sure a lot of fans thought was sweet, that he used to do up until a few years ago. Why is that inauthentic? And this version of him is seen as more authentic? Is it because he's more in your face? It seemingly more straightforward, more antagonistic? I don't know who Novak Djokovic is. I don't know him personally. I guess I just don't understand why the boob throwing thing wasn't considered an authentic part of his character, when it was really a reflection of, I think, the reaction he desired from the crowd, right? He was doing something because he wanted people to see him in a certain way. And that in its way is authentic.
Well, you thought that people are thinking this is authentic because they've always thought of him as the villain and want to run with that narrative. And so if he's leaning into being the villain in this situation, or maybe just an asshole, maybe they just think he's an asshole. So what you've said to me privately is that it's just all around cringe. That's what the authenticity is.
In my view, right? And I've talked to Djokovic fans, the ones who still speak to us, and they've said, I don't view him as a villain, and I never have. So when people say that, it doesn't ring true to me. So if you feel he's leaning into this villain character, a lot of Djokovic fans don't really think that's him. That's not how they view him. It's just sort of weird to me, like, that as he's gotten more antagonistic, that people say, oh, finally, he's being himself. And I guess I just don't understand, how do you know he wasn't being himself before?
This necessarily validates the narrative that Rafa and Federer were the great pure rivalry, and this evil, villainous person
right.
came to try and upend that, and that was the role that should have been played.
Right. And I feel like
he was that guy, but he didn't want to play it. He wanted to be loved by everybody. Mm-hmm. And now, finally, he can just let all that go. He doesn't care anymore about being loved, and he can finally lean into being that villain that we always knew he was.
But he still very much wants to be loved and respected, or else the Runa thing wouldn't have upset him.
Okay, was it all performative? I don't know what's in this man's head.
My point is, why are we deeming what's authentic and what's not when we don't even know this person?
Yeah, I just thought it was, frankly, pathetic. That's... I'm not willing to try and psychoanalyze it further. That one specific moment.
I agree.
Not extrapolating it further beyond what happened on that day to what happened prior in tennis in his career, or what will happen further. In that moment, it was pathetic for me.
Speaking of pathetic, Daniil Medvedev came, I think, pretty close to being defaulted from that semifinal.
He should have been.
In the first set, he engaged in some verbal abuse directed right at chair umpire Eva Azdaraki-Moore after she called not up, which indicates a double bounce. He disagreed with it, and he said something like, I don't know exactly what he said, but it was something like, fuck you, piece of shit, or something, which was directed at her. The supervisor was called onto court, and they conferenced about how to handle it. And I think in a lot of cases where the stakes were lower, this probably would have been a default. And they decided to give a code violation, but it's Daniil is a character who I think can make you forget about a lot of these things, because he's smart. He says things that are poetic. He has charisma, but
his rap sheet is long.
This is inexcusable.
He has a long rap sheet.
Absolutely wild. And there are a lot of factors that would have made this a bigger deal. One of the factors is his gender. And if he were more famous in the West, it would have been a bigger deal. If he were Serena Williams, it would have been something we talked about for the next probably 15 years. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that people went out of their way to fall on their sword for Carlos Ramos during that U.S. Open final, saying that she insulted his integrity. Okay, I hear you. But Daniel literally said, "Fuck you, you piece of shit," to an umpire. That's okay? Like, that's cool?
Allegedly. Some of that was said. We don't know exactly how much of it and what the exact words and sequence were.
Yeah.
But there were fucks directed toward her.
Yes. Clearly, umpires and supervisors exercise a lot of discretion based on what happens and what kind of match you're in. If this weren't a Grand Slam semifinal at Wimbledon with millions of people watching, with broadcast rights on the line, this probably would have been a default. It just honestly really pisses me off that it came and went with nothing. And we've been talking about other people's outbursts for literal decades.
But also, again, he has a rap sheet, but he's somebody who's reformed his image because he can perform in the necessary way to have people fall all over themselves to forget it.
Yeah. Generally, male players don't speak to men this way. Would he have said this to Kater Nooney or Seamus? Well, Seamus takes a lot of abuse. But, I mean, just a month ago, Hubie Hurkacz said, we need to get this lady out of here.
Trying to convince
about a gold badge judge, Alison Hughes, who's been doing this for like 30 years.
Trying to convince Grigor Dimitrov to join a coup to overthrow the umpire mid-match.
Male players don't try a lot of this shit with male umpires.
Sure, they argue and get very animated and scream and whatever, be petulant. They want to be petulant, but cussing at an umpire like that directly and so casually, like...
And the personal attacks?
Yeah, that's a big red flag for me.
Let's move on to some more good news. I swear, my heart is full with the news that Taylor Townsend is now a major champion. After her third major final and everything she's been through, it's just amazing news.
Katerina Siniakova, you know how at Wimbledon there's a final at club where you make the quarterfinals in singles and you get invited back for life, pretty much. And you have this special club and there's like a catered room or suite where you can go and all the former champions and quarterfinalists can mingle or whatever. Katerina Siniakova is doing her best to get membership in the Cocotte Club. Because she won the French Open with Coco Gauff, and now the very next slam, she's winning Wimbledon with Taylor Townsend. Who's next?
Asia Mohammed, perhaps.
Alicia Parks is come out on the phone to her coach right now, trying to get Sloane.
Right. But 2 slams in a row, it's 2 Black American women, both of whom who have seen a ton of success in doubles, but had never won a slam in doubles. And since she's broken up with Krejcikova, she has some time. She doesn't have a fixed partner, and she has partnered both of them to win slams.
I saw somebody tweet that she's done more for Black people in the U.S. than Obama did in his entire presidency.
It's just jokes, folks.
This was Taylor's 3rd major final. Her and Siniakova beat the number 1 seeded team of Mertens and Hsieh, then the number 2 seed of Dabrowski and Rutlev in the final. It was an outstanding performance. Taylor was so happy. She said she hadn't had much or anything to drink in the last few months, but she was lit that night when she was on Instagram Live, saying that they just kept giving me champagne. Fear not, Hsieh won mixed doubles. She didn't win the women's doubles. She had won the title the last 3 times she played here at Wimbledon. This time, she takes home the trophy in mixed doubles.
Hsieh had not lost in Wimbledon women's doubles since 2018. And as you said, she had played 3 Wimbledon since then, won all 3. And again, she does not go home empty-handed. Still got a trophy. Wins mixed doubles with Jan Zielinski from Poland. They also won mixed doubles at the Australian Open this year. It was an incredible tournament for women's doubles players. Babs Krejcikova wins her 12th slam title off of 13 finals. Her former partner, Katerina Siniakova, wins her 9th slam title. Hsieh wins her 9th slam title.
We're talking about all-time great doubles players here. I mean, we have quite a few with mid-teens to 20s in terms of the number that they've won. Of course, Navratilova, Shriver, Venus and Serena, Martina Hingis. But of this generation, these are, they're no longer just the greatest of their generation. They're some of the greatest doubles players of all time.
And not only the number of titles, but their records in finals are incredible. In men's doubles, Harri Heliövaara from Finland and Henry Patton from the UK win the men's doubles title over Townsend and Purcell from Australia.
Last year, Heliövaara actually missed Wimbledon. He was taking time off for the birth of his child. And Patton was working for IBM Keeping Stats at Wimbledon during college and said that he was never good enough at the job to be promoted to a show court. Heliövaara won his first slam last year at the US Open. That was mixed doubles with Delanina. Here at Wimbledon, they knocked out the numbers 4, 5, and 9 seeds on the way to beating number 15, including the 2022 Wimbledon winner Purcell in the final. That brings us to the end of Wimbledon. 3 of 4 slams done for the year. We're gearing up for the US Nope, we're not. We're gearing up for the Olympics.
Oh my God, the Olympics.
Back on clay. Rafa is back this week.
Call me Madison Keys, because I'm not going.
He's going to open against Leo Borg, Nepo of Sweden. And really looking forward to seeing Rafa back. He seems to be happy, seems to be practicing well. He's had quite a bit of time to practice unencumbered on clay now. So I have good feelings about this latest return.
Okay.
My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. Everything Body Serve related can be found at linktree.com/thebodyserve. Thank you for listening.
Till next time.
Thank you very much.